So hello and welcome back to Crafty Doctor's YouTube channel. So I had a problem with my Xbox One X Scorpio edition making lots of fan noise, especially when it was coming under different loads from different games, especially graphically intense games. And if I just be quiet, you should be able to hear the fan now. And this problem was getting worse and worse, and the reason why I'm just panning with the camera is just so you can see. So as I come down again, you'll hear it. So yeah, the fan's making a lot of noise, and it was only getting worse, so I figured it was time to do something with the Xbox One X. So in this video I will show you how to disassemble your Xbox One X, how to clean the GPU down, and what to use to clean the GPU down if you're doing this job yourself. Also, I won't be using the liquid metal that some of the YouTubers have been using on the CPUs and also on consoles. I'll be using thermal paste, and I'll show you at the end, obviously when it's all put back together again, the sound difference that it makes. And I have to say it was a big difference in the sound and the fan noise. I was quite surprised. I wasn't expecting such a big difference, but obviously I've been used to the noise it was making. So as I just go down the hill now in this training mode, you'll hear the difference, and I'll just move the mic nearer and just go quiet just while so you can hear the fan difference. So there you go, really noisy, and let's get into the video. So this is going to be one of my longer videos, so in certain parts I will speed up the video to try and keep the length down if you're following along. And obviously if you are following along, you can always just slow the video down if there's certain bits that you want to catch. Yeah, so as you can see, this is one of the earlier Xboxes, one of the first ones, the Scorpio edition, the ones that they released on day release. So I've had it a couple of years now. So in theory, plenty of time for the thermal paste to dry out. But anyway, getting back to this, we need to take off the security seal off the back screw. And then there's two black screws on the rear of the Xbox One X that we need to remove so we can get the top cover off. So we'll take that off and then we'll just unscrew the two screws. So once we've got the two screws put to one side, we can then just lay the Xbox down flat and get the top cover off. Once we get the top cover off, we can then get to the insides and see what we're doing. If you've never opened your Xbox, if you just have a bit of patience taking that top cover off, if it is the first time that you have removed it, along the edge of the Xbox, there's sort of little L brackets that the top cover clicks it into. Okay, so now I am taking the three screws off the front panel, which you can see there is just facing the camera. There's three sort of gold screws in there. I am just going to, if I can find the right Torx screwdriver, I'm just going to unscrew these three and then put them to one side. Okay, so now them screws are out. We need to just get the ribbon off. So if you just wiggle this off, it comes off a connector block at the back, and then there's a little flick on the top of the ribbon cable to just remove the ribbon cable from the front control panel. Now we need to get the two screws, the three screws out the side. There's a side little circuit board on here on the side of the Xbox. Two silver screws and then one black one. I'm trying to keep it up to the camera. Nearly lost it then, just trying to hold it up to the camera so you can see what I'm doing. But yeah, you see that's the black screw on the end there, and then there's two silver screws to come out. So I'll take these out, and then this just pulls out. There's no ribbon cable on this one. You just wiggle it out. It's on a small connector on the slots in the side of the Xbox One X. Okay, so now we have that small circuit off the side of the Xbox. We can start on the main body. So I'm just going to unscrew all these now. There's one on the right that you definitely don't want to miss, which has a cable on it, which is on the bottom right hand corner of the black side. But truthfully, obviously they all need to come out anyway, apart from the four black ones which hold the processor to the back of the casing. So it's best to leave these on at this point. Everything else can come out, so screw all these out. So once we get all these screws out of this side, we can then flip the Xbox over on to its other side, so we can remove the bottom cover from the main body and the main metal casing, and this just slots over the top, so it should just pull off. Now you've got the screws out, as long as you've got all the screws out, because some of the screws come through from the other side into that casing. So if you've left anything in, you won't be able to get it off. So make sure you've got all the screws out that I've just indicated, apart from the 4 black ones. And then now we can take out the, it should be 2 screws on this back side that we need to remove. So once you get these out and put them to one side, we can now look at splitting open the outer casing to get to the insides. As far as accessibility goes, this Xbox seems to be really good, really, for repairability. I think iFixit give it about 8 out of 10 for access into it. So if you're taking it off this way around, like I am, make sure you hold onto the CD drive, or the Blu-ray drive, because that's just the weight on the corner. If you've got it the other way around, then you shouldn't have to do that. But yeah, if you're doing it the way I've just done it, make sure you hold on to the Blu-ray drive in your hand as you're pulling it up, otherwise you'll pull on the leads. So you see my hand was on it there, just as I was flipping it back over. Okay, so now we're on the inside. So I'm a bit daft here, because I'm thinking, because I've done hard drives on Xbox One X's before, I'm thinking access to the hard drive. So I'm starting to take the drive out, which needs to come out. But really, if you leave the drive down, you can actually get the power supply out first, which is the black item that's underneath the Blu-ray drive at the moment. So now will be the time just to put this down to the front. So you can get the power supply out, take the power supply out, and then you can get to the connectors underneath the power supply. But I'll pull mine out with a tweezer, so that shows you the way to do it if you're just doing your hard drive. But like I said, this is a full strip down, so really I should have taken the power supply out first. It would have made things a bit easier. So now we have the Blu-ray drive out, and we have the hard drive both clicked out from their connectors and their mounting positions. So next thing that needs to come out is the power supply, which you can see there with the PWR on it in the top right hand corner, and it's usually has a bit of sticky tape. That grey foam that's on the left, that usually sticks the power lead down all the way along the length of the top of the fan. So just peel this off gently, try and keep it for when you're reassembling, don't try and just rip it off. So make sure it just comes off nicely and in one movement like that. And it's clicked into the fan in the top left hand corner, so just make sure you take the hook out so it folds out nicely. Unclip the fan from its from the motherboard, so make sure that's unmounted, and then obviously if your fan's making a noise, now's the time to check it, see if it spins okay, see if there's any muck or dust on it or anything like that. I'm just trying to focus the camera so you can see inside the fan. Yeah, so you can see inside the fan a bit better, and you can see it's spinning freely, no noise, no real dust or anything like that in it. So yeah, it looks reasonably okay. So this is the heatsink that we're trying to get at, and that's where your GPU sits underneath. I'm just checking it for heat there because it was on probably half an hour ago, so I'm just checking now how hot it is before I strip down this next section. So at this point, once we've just unhooked the power supply, it just sits in there. As long as you've taken the screws out, then that should just come out like I've just shown on the video. And then there's a small sort of piece of metal, folded metal over with insulator on it that sits on the back in between the fan and the rear HDMI, and sits on the top sockets there. So make sure you put that to one side, don't lose that. And now we've done that, we can now flip the Xbox over and get the 4 screws out that we left in earlier. These are the only things that hold in the main board on to the bottom of the metal chassis. What I might do here is just put a piece of cardboard underneath just to stop it pushing on something hard. So when the board does come out, I can just sit the board on top of the cardboard and just stops it, like I say, just anything rubbing that shouldn't be doing in there. So I'll get these 4 screws out and we'll flip it back over, and then we should be able to lift the board away from the metal chassis. So as you come out, if you pull it sideways, because the HDMIs and the USBs at the back, they're sat in the plastic, so it might just be a bit stiff, but just give it a bit of a wiggle and it should just prise out nice and easily. Like I say, I have to put mine on the on that piece of cardboard just to lift it off the table so it's not sat on something hard. So you see there on the back of the chassis, I'm just pointing out, there's a white pad and there's a chip on the bottom that sits and dissipates heat through that metal piece. So that's the chip, and you can see the white residue from the thermal pad that's on the bottom of the chassis, which I'm just indicating there. So yeah, just make sure this is nice and soft, which it is. It's plenty pliable, so when it goes back together, we shouldn't need a new pad on there. It should be okay for the chip to push back on there and dissipate the heat through the bottom of the chassis. One thing I did notice on my board, just around the edge where the copper is, you can see how it's all faded. I don't know if it's supposed to be like that, or if it's wear, if it's a fault on the board, or if it's due to the heat problems. But you can see how it's all sort of crumbled and broken away all the way along the edge. So yeah, be interesting to know if you guys do this job, if what you find on the board, and if it looks the same along the edges, and if you see the deterioration like I was just pointing out and indicating there. Okay, so anyway, let's get to the next bit. So we finally get to take off the X clamp that sits on the back of the main Xbox motherboard. And I'm just trying to get the camera in close and zoomed and focused on the point that I need, if we can just get it. So yeah, if you can just see the clips there, they sort of hook onto the screws, like sprung loaded. So we need to get them clips off. Now, I've seen on some videos they get screwdrivers underneath them, resting on the motherboard and all sorts of stuff. That is definitely not the way to do it. You need to obviously not really put any pressure on the board. So the trick is to get the screwdriver in the end. Now, normally I'd have this flat on the table. I'm just holding it up so you can sort of see it on the camera if we can. So yeah, you've got to get it into one of the edges. Just find one that's got the biggest gap really to start with, and you can find one, then you just push it into it and then lever against the actual screw. So you see I'm just working around, but like I said, normally I'd be resting on a table to do this. But once you do get under one, it should just spring off. Like I say, I'm just trying to hold it to the camera, just getting it, and there we go. And that's how you release all 4. And if you sat on the table, like I've just put it down now, it's a lot easier just to get the screwdriver in and then prise them off, and they just pop off as you get the screwdriver going. Once you get 2 off, it will slide to one side. So if you're comfortable using a pair of tweezers or something like that, you can put your piece of cardboard or something to insulate the a board from your pliers and just ping them off with this. But I wasn't actually levering against the board. I was literally just pulling it sideways there, you notice, just to get the clip off the stud that comes through the main board from the Xbox GPU. Put the board the other way around, and then you should just be able to pull it off by hand. It might be a bit dry if it's stuck on. So yeah, if it's been on there a while, mine come off reasonably easy there. But it is dry, as you can see there on the actual video. If I can just focus it on the actual heatsink itself. And this is the so-called water-cooled chamber that when they first announced the specs and they were talking about it, it's not really pumped round as such, but it is obviously a different way of cooling things. And all the pads that sit around the side, is now's the time to check. So all the grey pads surrounding the actual GPU and just to the left. So anywhere where the sort of turquoise thermal pads are, make sure that they're going to sit on the chips that they should be sat on. If they're to the side, if it's a bad install or anything like that, then it's not cooling the chips down as it should do. But yeah, so now let's get to the cleaning side. So I'm using a WD-40 specialist spray. It's a fast-acting contact cleaner. It's not the standard WD-40 oil. It is a specific cleaning spray for cleaning electronics down. So I've used this on multiple different devices, not just Xboxes, all sorts. I tend to go back to it. You can use white spirits and all sorts of different things, types of cleaning fluids. But I tend to use this because it's non-conductive and it's really good for cleaning. So yeah, so start the scraping off. I'm going to start by scraping the thermal paste off the actual cooling block itself. Make sure you've got a couple of rags by, and make sure you don't drop any of this on the board itself. So just try and keep it to one side away from the main board. It's obviously a thermal conductor, but you don't want any mess getting onto the board or onto the contacts. So get some of your spray and use your cotton buds, or you can use a cloth on this section, but make sure if you're going to use the same thermal pads that you can see the turquoise pads all the way around the main block, if you're going to reuse them, make sure you don't get any muck or any dirt or anything off the cloth, like making a mess of them. So yeah, I'm just using cotton buds, using the cleaner, give it a couple of whip round there, make sure it's clean, tidy anything up on the thermal pads, make sure they're all okay. If they all look okay, then you can then move to the main board. So I think I'm happy with that. It looks nice and clean. All the fins look clear, so that you can get a kind of compressed air and give them a blowout as well. But yeah, everything looks good. For all you guys who are putting new thermal pads on, it looks like they're about a 1.5mm to 2mm thick, these pads. So if you're replacing these for new thermal pads, then I'd recommend probably getting a 2mm pad. A 1.5mm is bare minimum, because that's probably what it squashes down to. But if you get some 2mm thermal pads, some of the Arctic stuff, that should be fine if you're replacing them for that type of thing. Okay, so on we go to the main board, and this is the same process really. Clean this off. I'm only going to clean the main GPU. I'll just sit it on the cardboard again, just so we're not putting any pressure on the back of the board. So yeah, so same process. We're going to first scrape off the excess, the larger amounts of the old thermal paste, just using the pry tool, making sure I don't damage any of the components as I'm doing it. So just be very careful while you're doing this. Use something plastic, don't use anything sharp, because you don't want to be scratching into the board. So yeah, non-conductive and something that's reasonably sharp, but you can get around and scrape all the excess fluid off. If you've opened it up and it's not dry, then this might be quite, because obviously it's like a paste when it goes on. So just make sure you get it all off and clear that. And once you get the excess scraped off, then you can get your cleaning fluid and start spraying it down and start giving it a scrub. So I'll speed this section up again and we'll get it clean. So yeah, this is another one of them jobs. You've just got to take your time, be patient, and use the cotton buds and something soft or plastic just to go around the edges where it's really dry. I'm not going to go really to town on the around the edge of the chip. I'm just going to make sure it's mostly clean, and obviously the main chip body wants to be fully clean. But I'm going to get this main residue off the side sections. So it looks like we're nearly there with that. So I'm not going to go, like I say, fully to town on them edge bits, as long as they're clean and the main base of the chip is fully clean. That's the key things. Wipe any residue off, and if you're using a good spray, that should dry up straight away, and it's pretty much instantaneous. But make sure it's dry. And I'll just zoom the camera in just so you can see, just lift it up. So you can see there's a bit of residue still on the just the sides of the chip. And I could scrape that off and just get it fully clean around the edges. But the main chip in the center is the bit that we're trying to cool. Obviously we're not spreading thermal paste all around. We're just going to get it on that, put the pea-sized blob on the center of the GPU. So I'll just push that rubber down there, just coming up from that connector for the power supply. So yeah, so now we're going to need to put some thermal paste on. So I'll just zoom the camera out so you can see what I'm using. So I'm using Arctic MX-2 thermal compound for the Xbox One X GPU. So we're going to put that on, and hopefully it will be better than it was. So let's get the paste on. So I'm going to open the paste up, and then I'm going to put a small section onto the cardboard, just in case it's dried up on the end. It's relatively new, this tube, and it was sealed, so I'm not expecting it to be dry, but just in case there's any in the dry nozzle, it does have like a screw cap on the end. So I'll just set the screw cap off and then just give it a squirt. Obviously the trick is with these thermal compounds is to not put too much on, otherwise it squashes out onto all the other components on the side. So I'll just get rid of, make sure there's nothing on the end of it. It looks pretty fluid anyway, so no issues there, but it's always worth a check. So now we're done. Now we need to sort of, it's not really a pea size, it's sort of just a bit smaller than a pea size blob in the middle of the GPU, and then just rub it off, so that should be fine. So you see there's not a lot on there at all, but once the processor squashes against the heatsink, then that should squash out nicely. And what I'll do with this one, obviously check the thermal pads as well and make sure they're all okay. And if you've got some new thermal pads, like I said earlier, now obviously the time to take them off and make sure they go in at the right location. So what I'll do, I'll place this on the board, but what I'll do just for this video, I wouldn't normally do this, is take it back off once I have it placed so you can see the spread of the thermal paste. And like I said, I wouldn't normally suggest that once you get it on, you take it back off, or even if you do, you clean it down and then start again. But just so you can see that we've got the right amount on. So you can see that I've placed it in position now. So in theory now you can clip this together and you're good to go and start again. But what we'll do, we'll pull it off, and so you can see if it's spread on the GPU for the Xbox One X, see if it's spread out and covered it enough. So you can tell by the amount I put on and how much it's spread. So you see just the edges, it's just missed there on the side of it. So in theory I could put a bit more on, but I think when it clamps down it will be fine. I think when it clamps down there's pressure on that chip and it squashes in between. I think the contact will be fine and that'll be enough to cool it. Brand new paste. So make sure the pads are on. So I'm going to put it back on. Make sure that the 4 locating pins go through the back. Make sure all your thermal pads line up and the GPU thermal paste is on. And now we can get the clip on the back of the main motherboard. So I'm not going to show, this is the reverse of what we just went through, so I'm not going to go through that again. Obviously you can just work back. The other thing I will say, this X clip just pushes on, hook it onto the two of them and then just click it in with some pressure against the a flat surface. Okay, and once you've done that, then you can start just the whole process in reverse. Okay, so let's have a listen and see what we've got. So this is recording after I'm connected. I've rebuilt mine. Again, I'm filming on the iPhone just to hear, so listen. And this machine's been on for about 20 minutes, half an hour before I've started recording this video. Absolutely same position it was before, where the fan was seeking and going up and down. Nothing at all now. Well, there is a slight hum. You can't pick it up on the camera, but there is a slight, but nothing like what it was. So that's it. That's how to replace your thermal paste on your Xbox One X. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please do subscribe. I'd love to see your comments below. And please do hit the bell icon and subscribe to my channel, Crafty Doctor on YouTube.